You're listening to The Support Report with Be Present, where we share real stories from young adults and how support changed their lives.
Hey, thanks for tuning into another episode of The Support Report. We are Be Present. I am your host, Justin Peters. And as always, I am joined by my co-host, Kiara Riga. Kiara, how are you today?
I'm not bad. Looking forward to the weekend. Other than that, all good. How about you?
I'm doing excellent. Super excited about our conversation today, which provokes a question of mine. Do you have a cancer best friend, somebody that you've met through the journey that you've got to kind of share the experience with and lean on each other?
Yes, my friend Lauren. I don't know what I would do without her. We have the same metastatic diagnosis, and she's like my North Star.
And you guys, how soon into your diagnosis did you guys meet?
We met in January 2021, and I was diagnosed in September. And like things really started to turn around once I met her. Like it was a huge game changer.
Yeah. We've had extensive conversations on the podcast about, siblings that have supported other siblings, best friends, mother-daughter relationships, but I don't know if we've ever really covered friendships, cancer friendships on this. So I'm really excited because what I'm learning is that there just is certain aspects that are not relatable to people that aren't going through that experience. And the connection that you can have through this experience together is really interesting. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who else is on the line with us today and who we're going to be speaking to?
Yes, sounds good. I am so excited to bring on our guests today. So joining us today, we have Rosalina and Shauna. They are the hosts of the Too Young for This Shit podcast. They are two millennial breast cancer survivors who live on opposite sides of the US, and they share their real stories of their cancer and survivorship experiences on their podcast, Too Young for This Shit, with the goal of educating, empowering, connecting, and bringing laughter to their listeners. So Shauna and Rosalina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
We're so excited to have you here. So why don't we kick it off and just start off by you telling us a little bit about your cancer stories. Shauna, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Shauna. I am 33 now, but I was diagnosed at 32 with hormone positive breast cancer. I ended up having a double mastectomy, lymph node removal, 16 rounds of chemo, 25 rounds of radiation, kind of like the whole works. And yeah, I live in New York. I nanny. I live with my partner. We have a dog, and that's kind of like a little bit about me.
Yeah, and I'm Rosalina. So I'm 29 years old now, but I was diagnosed last year at 28. I am hormone positive, just like Shauna, and I had a single mastectomy. I did 6 rounds of chemotherapy and 33 rounds of radiation. The other thing about my diagnosis is that I was the first in my family to be diagnosed, which was really shocking and very terrifying for my family. And I also have a dog just like Shauna, and I live in LA. So that's just about me.
Outside of location, you guys are like a perfect match for each other. It seems like, how did you guys ended up getting connected and be, what is the genesis of the idea for this, for the podcast you guys started?
Yeah, so when I was diagnosed, I was pretty much in denial for a really long time. And I felt really alone, especially because when you hear about breast cancer, or from what I've learned, it's just happens more in older women and not necessarily younger women. So I felt really alone. And then I just woke up one day. It was the day after my mastectomy surgery that I was like, I'm sick or tired of being angry and feeling alone, that I want to start something. So I thought of starting a podcast, and I said, I think it would be a really great idea to find a a co-host. So I just joined all these Facebook support groups, and I just wrote out my story and said, is if there's anyone out there around my age that has a similar experience and wants to be a co-host with me, I'm all ears and I want to meet you. So through the bunch, I met Shauna, and I felt like when we did our first Zoom meeting together, I just thought that we like clicked automatically. And I just kept thinking about Shauna for like the past couple of days. And I was like, oh my gosh, is this someone who would be perfect fit for this podcast? And she is. So I'm super glad to have met her.
Yeah, I was kind of the complete opposite of Rosalina. Like when I was first diagnosed, I hit every support group that I possibly could find. I nanny, like I said, in New York City, and there's a ton of like nanny groups that I'm a part of. And I was like, there has to be a breast cancer support group like this. So I literally joined every single one that I saw, every New York one, just every single one. And even in some of them, I was struggling to find women my own age. It wasn't until I found the Young Survival Coalition support group, where it was all women under 40, where I was like, finally, like this is what I was looking for from day one. And I saw Rosalina's post, and I've been a big fan of podcasts for years. I love them. I've always wanted to start one. And so I answered, and yeah, we met, and we talked for quite a long time. And it was easy. It was an easy flow. How, even though we had the same diagnosis, we had such different views. And I think that also was it was great for the podcast, because it wasn't just because we had the same diagnosis doesn't mean that, everything we did was like the same and the mindset was the same, because it was completely different. So it was good to, I think, have we balanced each other out in so many different ways that it's just been really positive for our podcast.
Yeah. Rosalina, why'd you go back to Facebook groups? Because it sounded like at first you joined some and then quickly regretted that decision and unfollowed all of them.
Yes. It was prior to my surgery, where there was a lot of unknowns still, and a lot of the posts that I saw scared me. So I didn't want to get into my head with all of that posts. So I decided to not follow them. And then after I got in my pathology report and we exactly knew what was going on, what surgery I'm getting, and all that, I felt a little bit more comfortable going back to the Facebook groups, because now I know what my diagnosis is.
That's fair. That's really fair. I think that would overwhelm me and scare me a little bit in that way. Kiara,
yes.
Kiara, did you join any online communities or Facebook groups or anything?
Yeah, they're real tricky. I think I've gone through everything that you guys have. There's always that one lady whose profile picture is like a quarter of her face, and every day it's like, "Good morning, Pink Sisters," and that's just not me in any way, shape, or form.
That's not me either.
Yeah.
That lingo is just like, it makes me cringe. And just the pink in general and the ribbon is like such a trigger for me too. It's just like not something I advertise. I want to advertise. And I don't know. It's like, I kind of feel like this isn't a club that I wanted to be a part of. And I don't know. It's just, the Pink Sisters, like, if that works for you, great. It's just like not my scene.
Right, exactly. And that was what makes it so hard about joining these groups, is I'm sure there are other people in there who feel exactly like I do. And it's so hard to find that group. So it took a while for me too, because being metastatic as well has its own challenges, that I don't really like being in general breast cancer groups, because seeing the early stagers talk about ringing the bell and things like that, not that you guys shouldn't be able to celebrate that, but it's difficult for me to look at always. Right. And so finding the right niche for you, it takes some work, honestly.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah. And so like that was just another thing where, I was kind of looking for someone who was going through the diagnosis similar to what I was going through, right? I wasn't trying to look for someone who was like 3 to 4 years out, because I just felt like even though we had probably the same diagnosis, I just feel like she's not in my position right now. And so definitely just finding Shauna, and for both of us to go through chemotherapy at the same time, radiation at the same time, I think is like I've never heard that before. And so I think it's just like extremely special. And I don't know. I just meeting Shauna definitely has lightened up my mood, and feel that I have someone to go to, where if I didn't have her, I think I would feel much more alone in this process for sure.
And like Rosalina inspires me every day. Like she's so on top of like just like everything, like all the new information, health things. Like she'll send me, like, oh, I talked to your oncologist about this. And I like she's just so organized, and she keeps me organized, and like keeps me like so like I couldn't do it without her. Like we wouldn't be where we are right now without her, for sure. We are. It's like such a good, I don't know, I just feel like we are such a good team, and going through it together, even on different chemo regimens, we still had each other's backs like throughout the entire time, like the texting and the phone calls, and like I'm crying, she's crying, I tried to be like super funny at certain times where she was like super serious. This isn't funny. And I'm, like it was, I think sometimes I needed to be serious and had to stop joking around about it. And I think I brought some humor into her diagnosis as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I did not laugh about my diagnosis in the beginning for sure. And also it's funny because I don't cry in front of people, and for me to cry in front of Shauna, that's a big deal.
I love that. I really love that. It sounds like you guys have met your match. I've met so many people who all seem to have this breast cancer bestie that they just click with, and like they fill in the gaps of each other. Like you guys could be describing me and Lauren. So I think that's really, really special and awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did have one. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, your podcast was called Too Young for This Shit. And I was just curious, like, in what ways, I mean, I am also a young adult with breast cancer, but I'm curious for you guys, in what ways did age kind of play a part in your diagnosis and coming together and starting this podcast, just in general, I guess?
So I had found my lump 9 months prior to being diagnosed. It literally had come up overnight. I felt it in the shower. And that day I made an appointment with my gynecologist, and like I got it checked. Like I felt like I did what I was supposed to do, right? Like I felt it, like I went and got it taken care of. And she told me like flat out, you're too young. This is too big. It would be more pea size. But like that was the first thing she said. Like she dismissed me. She dismissed everything that was going on because I was too young. She felt I was too young to have breast cancer. And that's I'm like still holding a little bit of a grudge because of that. I wish that I had self-advocated a little bit more, but it was a doctor and I trusted her. And maybe I always just think like maybe it wouldn't have affected my lymph nodes if, she didn't think I was too young, and maybe I wouldn't have had to do 16 rounds of chemo. Or I always think about it. I try not to harp on it too much, but those words were, it delayed me getting treated. And, that's how it affected at least me.
Yeah, the way it affected me was just that like all my doctors, each time I see a new doctor, they would just say the phrase, "Oh, you're so young," and that's just how they begin with the conversation. And I was just so sick and tired of fucking hearing that phrase that I decided, and I told Shauna, I was like, we need to call it this. Like, there's no other podcast name that we should name this. So it definitely, like, it affected me, because if I was too young, then why did it happen to me in the first place? Can you tell me why this happened to me? And then I also realized that, it's happening more and more to young women. And I kind of see it, like, now that I'm in this space, I see it more often than I have when I was not diagnosed. And so I'm just also wondering, like, what the hell is going on? Is it environmental? Is it just our food and how it's processed? Like, I'm just so I don't know what the word is, but like confused as to why this is all happening.
Sounds concerning, to be honest. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's like the yellow car syndrome, like you buy a yellow car and then you see it more often kind of thing, or like any make and model of a car. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know if there is more cases with younger people? Like, it statistically, is it increasing?
So I haven't seen a stat. I don't know about you, Shara or Shauna, if you've seen a stat. I've just been talking to more and more young women.
So
It is on the rise.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was gonna say, yeah, it's on the rise. And because people like us are constantly being told, oh, you're too young, we're like exponentially more likely to be diagnosed metastatic from the start. Which was like, Shauna, almost your exact same story happened to me, right? I went in, they told me, oh, it's just a cyst, you'll be fine. And then a year later, it's metastatic breast cancer in all my bones, right? And so, like, this is not unique. And, I don't know any of the causes, but it is on the rise, and it is concerning. And it's obviously it's concerning from the health aspect of it, but exactly what you were pointing out, Rosalina, of like the doctors come in and they're like, oh, you're so young, like they don't know how to treat you, right? And so I think it's from all angles really concerning. Like, we need to be educating these doctors that, like, that's not the comforting thing that you think it is. Like, I know you feel uncomfortable right now, but like, we're 10 times that. You don't need to point out like how young I am,
Yes, absolutely. I think the numbers there, I mean, the statistics, it is on the rise for younger women, like women under 40 now. And now the American Cancer Society wants to push back mammograms to 45 and not even 40. Like, I don't understand. We have numbers, there's data, and that infuriates me more than anything, like, and the fact that your insurance won't even cover it. Like, I can't, I feel like people that even think like, oh, like, I have family history. No, like, your insurance won't even cover it until they're 40 anyways. And it's just like, I feel like women under 40 are just failed. Like, we're being failed by so many different, I mean, by our doctors, by healthcare, I mean, health insurance, things like that. Like, I don't know. It's just, that bothers me so much. And you're too young, like, you're too young. My other thing was like, going to see my oncologist or doctors and them being like, you're young, you're healthy, you're going to tolerate this so well. And it's like, if I'm so goddamn young and healthy, why am I here?
Yeah.
It was just like, that was the one phrase that actually even bothered me more than you're too young.
I get that all the time, and it drives me absolutely insane. And do you want to hear something even more infuriating? The American Cancer Society, as they're raising the age for mammograms, they're lowering the age for colonoscopies. And guess what? Population generally has colorectal cancer, it's men. So, and breast cancer obviously is mostly women. Like, I'm not going to get into a whole like political thing here, but it just, it's a really tough thing to see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I couldn't even believe when I read it. I was like shocked. I still like, I get like enraged when I think about it.
Right. And they blame it on dense breasts, but it's like, okay, you're not even recommending self breast exam. Like, there are other things we can be, because it's fair, right? If a mammogram, you have dense breasts, you're not likely to be able to see anything. Fine. We have ultrasounds, we have breast self-exams, we have so many other tools, but you're just pushing the age up, right? So like, I would be willing to have a conversation about like, okay, mammograms don't work, what else does? But they just want to shut it down, it seems like.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
So that's the underlying argument in this, or that they're pushing, that it's just not effective at that age?
Yes. So the younger you are, generally the denser your breasts are, which makes it very difficult to see cancers on a mammogram. And so they're kind of like, well, you're too young. And I mean, both times I went in, it was like they wouldn't even give me a mammogram. It was just straight to ultrasound because they were like, your breasts are just too dense. But ultrasounds don't have the 3D capabilities that mammograms do. And so I think that's how it was missed on the first time.
That's insane to me. I don't know why you would push preventative care if you weren't going to replace it with something at minimum.
Yeah.
If you guys don't mind, educate me a little bit. You guys mentioned hormone positive. What do you mean by that?
You want me to answer first? Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have directed that at you.
Okay. Basically, our cancer feeds off the estrogen and progesterone in our bodies. So when part of treatment for positive breast cancer is hormone blockers. So what they do is they try to shut down the hormones so that the cancer has nothing to feed on.
Interesting. Okay. I'm guessing there's adverse effects to that as well.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
I find it harder than like, I'm also hormone positive. I find it harder than like treatment, like the joint pain, the fatigue, all of that is so hard.
Yeah, it's I feel like it's harder. Yeah, harder than chemo for sure. It's just like I would wake up, like I'm currently actually not on anything at the moment because I had a hard time with the shots that I was on. Like I couldn't walk. Like I literally would get up to walk and like none of my joints would move. And I just, I had like a little bit of a meltdown on my oncologist. Like there's gotta be something better for we just went through the most horrific situation, or like we're going through, like having metastatic breast cancer. I don't, but like, this is a constant thing in your life, obviously. And like, there's gotta be something better. Like we can't feel like we're 80.
Right. Yeah.
After going through this, like, it's just not fair. And the hormone blockers, I mean, I think it's worse.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I don't know, Rosalina, if you've had the same experience.
I would say like in the beginning for sure. But I'm the type of person that I am pretty tough with a lot of things. And I'm not to say that like your experience is like you're not like that. I just try to find different ways to combat the pain. Like I still get joint pain, of course. But I kind of could see maybe like when I exercise more, I don't have that much joint pain, or when I'm like eating better, then I don't necessarily have those effects. But it definitely like differs day to day, week to week. So not every week is perfect for sure. But I think I've been handling the medication better than I expected.
That's really awesome. For real.
Well, that's why I stayed quiet, because I was like, I don't want to like say my opinion.
She's calling you out, girls.
It's all valid. I mean, I've had to do some of the same kind of things, right? Like I exercise way more than sometimes I feel like I can, because it helps so much. And like Celebrex has been a game changer for me with the joint pain, but it's tough for sure.
I mean, I do get hot flashes. They're manageable for sure, but there are times where I'm like, I take off my jacket and then I'm cold, and then I put my jacket on and I can't decide whether to put the jacket on or not. So yeah, that's just like some things I have to deal with. And I feel like every women, especially if they're menopausal, have to deal with, which I didn't think I would be at that stage at 29 years old. Because I was telling my mom, I was like, yeah, mom, you've been on menopause like a couple of years now. Can you tell me some tips? She couldn't tell me.
It feels like nobody has tips. They just want to complain about it.
Yes.
But like some of the tips are just so outrageous and you're like, is this real? Like,
what's the craziest one you've gotten?
See, I didn't have any hot flashes. I lucked out. I mean, I couldn't walk, but that was, I didn't have the hot flashes, so I didn't need it. But I mean, just in general, like I had joined a couple of healing cancer naturally groups. I don't know if you have experienced any of those. That is a ride. I mean, if you want your mind blown, you need to hit those groups because the stuff they recommend is obscene. Like, I mean, just I talked about it on our podcast. Like, it's just, I can't, some of this stuff is just, they're not even animal products. I mean, they're not even human products. They're
one was like a dog food or something for dogs. I was like, what?
Dog dewormer. It's like,
oh, I've heard the dog dewormer one.
Yeah. I mean, juicing, there was like another crazy one. I can't think of it at the moment. I was just like coffee enemas. I mean, it was just like, it was a full-time job, I think, to do half of the regimens that these people were. And like, it was kind of strange to me too, because it's like, oh, I know somebody who did this. It's not like I did this. I cured my cancer. I starved my cancer. It's not like, it's always just like somebody who knows somebody that had this ridiculous regimen. But I mean, that is.
But kudos to you, Shauna, for like giving it a whirl though, too. And being like, I'm going to see if it works or not. Like, let's give it a try.
Right.
Right. I mean, like, I'm a huge believer in science. Like science saved my life, but I always do like a holistic approach. So I was trying to find a balance, but I was like, there's not really much of like a balance here. Like, this is just, to me, for whoever does it, I'm not knocking it, but it was crazy. It was like, it was crazy.
It's so funny. And I feel like people who don't have cancer go in there too, just to like try and push their stuff. I got a facial a couple weekends ago and my esthetician, I was at a hotel and so it wasn't like my usual person or whatever. And she was like, oh, you have cancer. Okay, oregano oil, that's gonna solve it. And I was like, that's right at the beginning of the facial. So I was like, I'm here for an hour, just like so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I know. Somebody told me I was going to do an alkaline diet and I was going to take colloidal silver and I was going to starve my cancer. And I was like, I got to get out of here.
Well, didn't she tell you?
Oh, she told me I wasn't going to have to. Yeah, I wasn't going to have to do chemo. We're going to starve my cancer. I'm not even going to need treatment. I'm going to do Reiki and sound therapy. I mean, it was like, I left there being like, this isn't, and I tried the alkaline diet. I killed myself trying to do the alkaline diet. Like, it was like, that was another full-time job of trying to navigate that. And like, then doctor's appointments and then like trying to find half this organic stuff that I've never even heard of before in my life. And like, it was just a lot. It really was. I don't know how some people do it. And it just, especially at 32, I wasn't willing to risk an alkaline diet starving my cancer. I wasn't willing to do that. So
God.
Yeah.
Sounds awful. Rosalina, I'm guessing you were too pessimistic to try any of those methodologies.
I knew to stay far away from that.
Just let Shauna test drive it for you and let you know if anything works.
Well, she just told me randomly one day, she's like, oh, I joined this group and you can't believe what they say on this group. So I just got the information from her. I never, ever like followed that group. I knew I needed to go through the process of eliminating the tumor and all that, because I again, what Shauna says, I believe in science. So I definitely wanted to go through that route.
Well, girls, it's been really fun having you on the podcast. And I know you shared just a little bit of your story, and we've been goofing around over the last couple of minutes as well. And I think that's probably freeing for a lot of people that are listening to this. But I know you guys do a fairly good deep dive on both of your journeys and share a lot in there. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about your podcast, where they can find it, and what they can expect if they tune in?
So you can find our podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And season 1 is out now. It's been out for a couple months. And we took a deep dive into our journeys and our doctor's appointments, our second opinions, and kind of, going through the whole journey of chemotherapy and what that was like. I feel like that took about like 3 episodes just talking about chemotherapy. And right now we're currently working on season 2, and that should be launching sometime this summer. Crossing fingers, I think hopefully in July it would be launched. And so with that season, we're going to be talking about radiation. We've been interviewing like our siblings and our partners, and then we have a few guests that are coming on. And then Shauna and I also did a solo episode. So it's just going to be a bunch of different episodes for season 2. We're so excited to launch that sometime in the summer.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think, just talking about survivorship as well. I know a lot of people struggle with that. I'm struggling a lot. And I think it's important it's not like, okay, yeah, you get a clean PET scan and things are great. And it's really not like that. And I think it's so important to kind of share that with everyone that, like, we're all struggling post cancer. It's not a walk in the park. It's not everything is perfect and great. And, that I think was one of the biggest rude awakenings for me, thinking like, oh, after chemo, I'm going to feel great. I'm going to just go back to my life. And my life is different now. And people to say that, I've heard in the support groups, like, nobody talks about this. And I think that, that it's like important for us to do so.
I love that. I mean, I'm sure it's not easy to talk about, but it's such an important topic. So I can't wait to hear season 2 and all of your interviews and whatnot. Interviewing the siblings sounds interesting. I'm very excited to hear that episode. But we always like to We always like to wrap up here. We are a support-focused organization, so I would love to hear what you guys think that good support looks like to you. Why don't we start with Rosalina?
Good support is, for me, it's just someone who just reaches out and asking like how they can help. Is the best thing that someone can do. And I would also say, like, it's always nice to have like a conversation, like a phone call, and just talking about things other than your cancer diagnosis. So that's definitely support for me, because that just keeps my mind off of other things that I'm not currently dealing with. So I definitely would say those 2 things is support for me.
I love that. What about you, Shauna?
I mean, I agree with Rosalina. I think it's nice to have just like those phone calls where there's like normalcy and it's not just always about cancer. But I also think it's nice, like, just having somebody validate your feelings, like I just sometimes it's okay just to want to like cry and say like, fuck this, and just have somebody say like, yeah, fuck this. Like, instead of trying to be like, like, you're going to get through this. Like, you're going to be better. Like, you're almost done. You're halfway there. Like, sometimes I just needed somebody to be like, this fucking sucks. And I'm sorry you're dealing with this. And, a lot of people don't know what to say. And I think that was like such a big part of like the support that I needed.
Love that.
Yeah.
And sending memes as well, because
cancer memes are everything.
Kiara always mentions cancer memes too. Yeah, you're always on that.
You do?
Oh yeah.
There's nothing like that makes me laugh more than cancer memes. Like I'm just going to follow that. I'm going to follow the cancer patient for the rest of my life.
It is the pinnacle of Instagram.
It is. It's my favorite account of all time. I
Same.
agree. I agree. It has me like my siblings follow it and they'll send me things and they just think it's hilarious. I have friends that think it's so funny too. Just like, you know, they know me and what I went through and it's just, yeah, I love it. It's the best. Cancer memes there's nothing better.
You said cancer patient. Is that the Instagram handle?
It's
called
the cancer patient.
Okay. I got to follow that now.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, it's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. We are super excited to hear season 2. So once again, everybody, Rosalina, Shauna, Too Young for This Shit. Check them out on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Probably one of the players that you're listening to right now. But ladies, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.